Published, 2027 Eastern Daylight Saving Time, the 26th of May 2018. Updated, 2027 Eastern Daylight Saving Time, the 26th of May 2018. Beware of attempts to smear and undermine the Speaker of the House of Commons, John Bercow. They are dangerous and wrong. I dislike much about Mr. Bercow, from his drippy politically correct opinions to his scorn for tradition. On the other hand, I know him to be intelligent, original and thoughtful. Full disclosure, he once gave me a lift to a public meeting in his Buckingham constituency, during which we had a fascinating conversation. He did not call anyone stupid, or attempt any form of harassment or bullying. But that's not really the point. The point is that the government is far too powerful, and the House of Commons is far too weak. And Mr. Bercow has made the Commons a tougher place than it was. By using his fairly limited powers, he has repeatedly forced ministers to come to the House to face urgent questions on topical matters. This is doubly good. First, it brings Parliament back to the center of national life, instead of being a snoozy, mostly empty room in which the government plods through its business and hardly any topical matter ever gets in. Few who have not worked there realize just how little happens in the chamber, most of the time, and how totally the government gets its way. By using his fairly limited powers, House of Commons Speaker John Bercow, pictured, has repeatedly forced ministers to come to the House to face urgent questions on topical matters. Second, it forces ministers, who quickly become arrogant in office, to come and explain what is going on, immediately, while the issue is still hot and the public are still angry about it. They really don't like it, and they also don't like the way Mr. Bercow lets question sessions carry on until the awkward squad have had a chance to bowl difficult balls at ministers. In the pre-Bercow age, it was easy for frontbenchers to blather on, use up the minutes and so prevent these troublesome questions from ever being asked. I have no knowledge of the various allegations against the Speaker, so can't comment on them. But I thought it was a very grave mistake on the part of the Metropolitan Police last week to give substance to stories that Mr. Bercow was being investigated by them. The police, in London and elsewhere, are obviously obliged to pay attention to serious allegations against anyone. But oughtn't they to stay quiet about them until they have something to report to the Crown Prosecution Service? People wrongly take their involvement as a sign of guilt. They seem far too willing to allow their authority and reputation to be used. As for the claim that Mr. Bercow was rude under his breath about Andrea Leadsom, the Leader of the House, I call as my witness that wise old Tory parliamentarian Ken Clarke, a man who has a good sense of humor and a good sense of proportion, much the same thing. He says, if action were taken every time a member of this House felt moved to say under his breath something rather abusive about another member, the chamber would be deserted for considerable lengths of time. Of course this is true, and with all these allegations you have to ask yourself this simple question: if Mr. Bercow was the fawning favorite of Downing Street, and didn't make life harder for ministers, would you be reading so many damaging stories about him, and so many prissy articles from in the know government stooges, attacking him? Of course you wouldn't. It may well be that Mr. Bercow has sat too long on his big green leather throne. It may well be time for someone else to take over. But if he is attacked in this way, then he must stay and we must support him even if we don't like him. It's a matter of principle. Downing Street is quite powerful enough already. We are a free country because speakers and MPs, from time to time, have been ready to challenge king or premier. One of the most powerful and beautiful passages in English literature is from St. Paul's first epistle to the Corinthians. It ranks with Hamlet's "To Be or Not to Be" soliloquy and with the superb poems of George Herbert and John Donne. I haven't room for it all, but it begins, though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, and have not charity, I am become a sounding brass, or a tinkling cymbal, and it ends, and now abideth faith, hope, charity, these three, but the greatest of these is charity. At its heart are the words, charity suffereth long, and is kind, charity envieth not. Charity findeth not itself, is not puffed up, doth not behave itself unseemly, seeketh not her own, is not easily provoked, thinketh no evil, rejoiceth not in iniquity, but rejoiceth in the truth, beareth all things, believeth all things, hopeth all things, endureth all things. Prince William gives a reading at a memorial service for the Manchester bombing victims. No British person should be ignorant of it. It is part of us. Yet at the moving memorial service to the Manchester bombing victims, Prince William read instead a filtered, homogenized, UHT version. For example, love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. Why? Who decided? Are we considered to be so thick that we cannot work out that on this occasion the word charity does not mean Oxfam? Those present were rightly expected to cope with Philip Larkin's lovely poem, The Trees. Why were they denied the full force and comforting power of the English Bible that helped to make us who we are? The nasty TV drama The Handmaid's Tale opened its new series on Channel 4 with another direct, explicit attack on Christianity, including lots of scenes of almost pornographic cruelty involving chains, muzzles and torture, plus a profanity-flecked mockery of the Lord's Prayer. They used up all the material in Margaret Atwood's original book last time, so now they can really let rip. I'd love to hear the makers actually explain why they attack Christianity, portraying it as a religion which brutally and sadistically oppresses women in the modern world, which it does not do. A scene from the drama The Handmaid's Tale, which opened its new series on Channel 4, an extraordinary moment on the usually right on BBC Woman's Hour. She warned against sanitizing history. We need to understand the actions of these women, however uncomfortable we find them, she said, adding that many of their bombs were placed on crowded commuter trains or in busy public streets, and it was mere blind luck that nobody died as a result. This very much backs up the work of the historian Simon Webb in his fascinating book The Suffragette Bombers. But it may be a while before the BBC admits the other part of the truth, that suffragettes were highly unpopular for their dangerous violence, and probably delayed the granting of the vote to women, rather than speeding it up. What I remember best about the whole Jeremy Thorpe episode, now a perhaps slightly too farcical TV drama, is the blazing fury in the newsroom of the National Daily newspaper where I then worked, as news of his acquittal came in that day in 1979. We knew all that stuff, but we couldn't print it, and nor could anyone else for more than 30 years. Hugh Grant as Jeremy Thorpe in the slightly too farcical TV drama A Very English Scandal. If anyone but the Rolling Stones publicly sang the songs Brown Sugar and Under My Thumb, look up the lyrics, they'd probably be arrested for multiple offenses against equality and diversity. Do they get away with it because they're basically thought to be part of the Cultural Revolution? Or just because they're rich? If you want to comment on Peter Hitchens, click here. Sorry, we are not currently accepting comments on this article.